I think we're a couple minutes in and we have a pretty full agenda for today's call. Again, I'm Mary Jo DeGrande. I'm Director of Professional Relations with Embark Behavioral Health. Thank you to everybody who's joining this call. We've been so overwhelmed and really thrilled with the response we've had. We have 200 people registered for today's call. So thank you to all of you. And a reminder that after the call, we will be sending out another email with links to our Google folder that has resources and recordings of the call, as well as a transcript. And there's an open invitation that if folks have other resources that they would like to share, please be sure to email them and we will add them in as we go. And that is, again, open. We just ask that you email them to us so that we can include them in the folder and make sure that that stays organized and as useful as possible. So for this second week of our community discussion, we wanted to talk about telemental health. We are aware that some programs have been using telemental health in some capacity, some programs, some professionals, some referring professionals certainly have been using virtual services for some time. However, in this particular time and place, obviously that has become a much more pressing need. And for those of you who might have been on right at the beginning, Christina Reddington from Wellspring, said what I think is true of many programs and practices, which is that to pivot into telemental health marks a very significant shift in services. And so there's a big learning curve. And at the same time, we recognize that other programs and folks have been using it for a while and have some expertise to share. So we wanted to offer an opportunity for suggestions and guidance around that from some folks who've been using it, as well as some considerations from some of our folks who are new to it and are on that learning curve. So we have 3 guests joining our call today to talk about telemental health. First, we have Daryl Fraze from Onward Transitions in Portland, Maine. And as strikes me as very typical of Daryl, I asked him to send me a bio beforehand to read, and he sent me a sentence, which is that he's been working in treatment programs since 1998 and in telemental health since 2013. But for those of you that know Daryl, and for those of you that don't, Daryl is an amazing clinician and the co-founder and chief clinician at Onward Transitions. Has a long, rich history in wilderness therapy as well, and I'm sure much more. There you are, Daryl. And clearly very modest in this bio. So he's going to lead us off today as a provider of telemental health, again, for a number of years. And so I know has some great tips and strategies to share. He will be followed by Dustin Tibbetts, who is a founding member of Interchange's first program, New Haven. Dustin shaped much of the core philosophy, its program leadership structures, employee training initiatives, and clinical policies and procedures. His career spans over decades. He has served on the boards of Early Light Academy and the Association for Children's Residential Centers. He's also on NATSAP's Government Relations Committee. Dustin is currently is the division president for Potomac Programs, and Potomac Programs has experienced a more recent shift to telemental health services. So Dustin will be sharing some of his experience and support around making that shift. And last but certainly not least, Megan Stokes is the Executive Director of the National Association for Therapeutic Schools and Programs, which, as many, if not all of you know, is the largest not-for-profit membership association dedicated to residential treatment centers, therapeutic boarding schools, and wilderness therapy programs. So Megan, in her daily work with organizations, dedicated to providing effective care to thousands of individuals experiencing a wide range of mental and behavioral difficulties, is going to share sort of the big picture of what she's seen throughout NATSAP's membership. And also share a little bit about the NATSAP shift from doing their advocacy day, which is the DC fly-in, and making that shift to a virtual format. With that, I am going to hand it over to Daryl Fries.
Thank you, Mary Jo, and thank you, Embark, for inviting me and Onward Transitions into this discussion. And a quick thank you to Liz for being a tech savant here for us. So I appreciate your help with this. Zoom is not my medium, so she's giving me a hand with this. So here we are, and I've been asked to give the opening remarks here about telemental health. And I use that term because I find it to be the most specific about what we're talking about doing. Telehealth is a generic term for lots of forms of health, but specifically today, I think we're talking about telemental health and the way we do therapy. And this is really a story about evolution. I mean, programs and organizations in general are evolving. We're watching major companies, churn out PPEs and ventilators. Last week, we got to hear how John Singleton and Jake Weld at their respective programs, Whetstone and Mansfield Hall, are evolving their staffing patterns to meet the needs. And there are plenty of stories of schools like across the country that are evolving to moving to being 100% online. And so that's what this story is. It's about pivoting. So with that, Liz, if we could pivot to the next slide, please. I'll talk about what the goals are for my next however many minutes I get to speak. And please know that there will be time to address some of your questions, and I will make myself available to try to answer some of your specific questions, because this is kind of a generic overview. And it's an educational presentation. So I'm not a lawyer. I am not the ethical body of whatever. I'm a mental health counselor, so I subscribe to AMCA's ethics. We all subscribe to different ethical bodies, and I cannot offer technical advice to you on your specific program. Our platform is G Suite, so I can certainly be helpful in that sense. This will just be an educational kind of survey here. And then I'll move into what I've been asked to share is a case study of Onward Transitions and how we have managed this pivot. And then again, like I said, we'll move on to your questions. So with that, Liz, we'll move to the next slide. And just a note to folks, especially for people who are new to telemental health, it's evidence-based. So three particular points that are really important, and that is that the research supports that the alliances that you can form here, the therapeutic rapport and relationship, they can be as good as in-person alliances. And that it also works well with people who have these mild to moderate anxiety and depressive symptoms. That's been my personal experience, and that's kind of my lane that I stay in. That's really who I work with, and I've found that to be anecdotally true to support the research. And I would imagine for a lot of us, that's our umbrella, anxiety and depression. And the other thing that you might find is that accessibility here tends to increase participation. This is an accessible medium, and we're working with a generation of folks who are digital natives, and they're familiar with it. So the hang up might be us. They might be more ready and willing to participate than we're giving them credit for. With that, we'll move to the next slide, which is really just kind of beginning to think about this as a program. And this is for all of you, and I know this is dense, but we'll stay here for a little while. There's really four pieces here, 4 core competencies that as a program you need to be aware of. And no one person needs to be the guru of every part. In fact, I would suggest that the first part, you absolutely should farm that out. So for your legal advice, get a HIPAA lawyer. get somebody on your team who understands telehealth. It's hard to find somebody who specifically understands telemental health, but in terms of telehealth, they're probably working with hospitals and giant practices. And so working with folks like that can really be helpful. I know ours is. And in terms of ethics, I don't know what the makeup of our crowd is today, but I would imagine some folks might be owners or top executives at your programs, and you're managing a lot of different challenges. There's a lot of competition for your attention and the things that you need to tend to keep your community safe and doing quality assurance. What I would recommend is you get your clinical director or somebody like that to be your ethical gatekeeper. Have that person be that objective voice and advocate for ethics as you move forward with implementing your telemental health strategies. Your clinical team, that's where you're going to really need to invest. I'll speak for us clinicians. Sometimes we're all about helping other people change, and sometimes it's hard for us to go through a change. And this is not probably as overwhelming as we're thinking it might be. You can do good clinical work, and you can get help in learning how to do the technical work. It's a shared process, and make sure that part of that clinical process is having someone who can provide good clinical supervision that has a telemental health slant, so that you're talking with people about privacy and informed consent and things like that. And then finally, the technical realm, you do need to have somebody on staff who can do that. Liz is serving that purpose for us today. For us, it's our program director, he's not only a therapist and a tech guy, but he's a millennial. I don't usually add exclamation points on the things that I write, but I had to because it just helps. And you'll also see that there's a note there. Informed consent is really important in all of the clinical work that we do, but it's really, really important for telemental health because technology is going to fail, and that undoubtedly will happen at an inopportune moment, and somebody is going to feel like they've been dissed. And you don't want your clients thinking that they've just been dropped. You want to be able to kind of talk through those contingencies ahead of time and have them prepared that, hey, this is probably going to happen when we're talking about something difficult. And remember that there are other ways that we can get in touch with each other should the tech fail. We'll have contingency plans for that. Shifting again onto this next slide, what's really important as you're going through this process of really figuring out how you're going to implement the legal aspects of telemental health, keep in mind that there are 3 parts to HIPAA. And those 3 parts include, and I'm just going to shrink this down in the way that I keep it organized in my head. So you have privacy, and that's the information. So PHI, I would assume that everybody who's here is a HIPAA covered entity. How you store, how you get that information, or what that information is. And then the next part is the security, how you protect it. So these are the technical pieces that you put in place to keep things stored. And usually that is now done electronically, but it's also about your policies and procedures, and really going through with a fine-tooth comb what your policies and procedures are that help you protect the information that you're sharing. And there are a lot of folks right now who are putting out lots of good drafts and samples out on the internet. We've looked at them and matched them up against ours, and there's good information out there, and it can be really validating, and it can be really educational. So I would really recommend you get out there and check that stuff out. Also, in terms of electronic data exchange, how you share your information, make sure you have a business associate agreement with those companies, with whoever whoever keeps track of your money, if you have a credit card account, and that's how people pay you. But also more importantly, like for us using a telemental health service like G Suite, Google Suite, we use Google Meet, we have a business associate agreement with Google that they are going to have end-to-end security. So we protect it on our end, they protect it on theirs, and it's a closed system. You can't get in unless you go through the proper channels. And then finally, the third part is how you own your mistakes. So having a breach notification policy and procedure, and understanding what the HIPAA laws are for you based on the size of the breach and how many people they had their information exposed. So again, I know that's a quick survey of those things, but I wanted to make sure that that information was out there for folks as we begin to kind of do more of a deeper dive here. With that, I'll move on to the timeline of the case study, and getting to Christina's question about, how do folks who haven't had experience with this, how do you get on board? We're really in a different and a really thankful situation in that we've been doing this all along. I've been doing it since I had a private practice, where that was really how I worked with my clients. It was primarily through that. And at that time, there were 3 people in Onward Counseling and Coaching, and we were all pretty foreign to this. We were non-digital natives, and we were using different platforms. Nothing was under the same roof, so it was really clunky and hard to manage, and we learned a lot. We had no breaches, so that was a good thing, but it informed us so that when 2016 came and we opened Onward Transitions, we knew that we wanted to get it all under one roof. We chose G Suite to streamline our platforms. We kept Best Notes, that's the one piece, but our program director is pushing for us to do something different. We're just clinging to that. That's a different discussion. But all of our staff that we've hired, they've really been digital natives, and we haven't really had to do a whole lot to educate them, and we haven't really had to do a whole lot to educate our members, and that's how we refer to our clients at Onward Transitions. They really came in with a whole lot of savvy, and so that really helped us as we moved into this next phase. So the timeline continues on the next slide, and this is how we responded to this COVID crisis. And this is all in the past few weeks. And I'll leave it here for you to kind of see that this can happen fairly quickly, going from talking with your planning team to talking with your full staff about, okay, this is how we need to move forward. This is how we as an organization need to evolve to meet the needs of our stakeholders. And to also begin to prep people for the contingency plans. And when this happens, we're going to do this. And if that falls apart, we're going to pivot and we're going to do this thing. So for us, we informed the staff, we shared all of our contingencies directly with our members, and would really like to, kind of keep everybody updated. And then we had our last day of face-to-face programming, moved to online programming, and we are now running at 50 plus hours of synchronous programming per week. So live, like we're doing right now. And because we were doing what we thought we needed to do with that, we thought it would be enriching to open it up to admissions and allow other folks to join our community. And that's where we've moved to. So the final slide in the time that I've got today is really a SWOT analysis. And this is specific to us. But I think that if you did this with your organization, you might come up with some similarities. The real challenge here is that for some folks, it's a challenge to make a move to going from face-to-face to doing this online, especially for folks with learning disabilities or some major mental illnesses. This might be contraindicated for them. And that's of course a real challenge. But what we saw was there were a lot of strengths to this and some great opportunities. And with that, you'll have an opportunity to look at this slide. And like I said, there'll be time for questions at the end, and you'll know how to reach me if you have other questions. But that's my brief survey. And with that, I hand it over.
Thanks so much, Daryl. And just a reminder that the PowerPoints will be made available after the call as well. Again, I'll send links to the Google folder where you can find this. So now we have Dustin. Where are you, Dustin? let you
Right
jump
here.
in.
Well, thanks, Daryl. That was awesome. I took a ton of notes on that, and that's been really helpful to us since you're the expert and I'm just a novice. We've been doing we pivoted, as you said, for about 10, 11 days now. So wanted to walk through, having been asked by Mary Jo to give a case study of a program that did a quick pivot. It's not going to be as rich as what Daryl just said, but I'll do my best. To start out, I'd like to ask you to think about one word, and it's a word that Rob Gent brought up last week, and the word is gratitude. I want you to think about that word for just a second in light of the current situation that we're all facing. You see my screen okay? Does that work? Okay. This is Danny DeVito saying, for the light of gratitude to shine brightly, the darkness of how bad it could be, how it could be worse, must be present. Rob talked about gratitude eradicating anxiety last week. I thought it was fantastic. And that's the approach we've chosen to take, is to be really grateful for all of the shifts and changes that are happening in our world right now. Some of these things we wanted to have shift in mental health for decades, and it's happening now, as Daryl mentioned. Let me just kind of give you a sense of what happened with us. Whoop, that's not moving. This is our timeline of our Maryland clinic. We were just behind Daryl, but Friday the 13th, no kidding, we went virtual due to all the schools closing in our whole state. We had heard rumors that our county might close, but the entire state closed schools. And clients immediately began saying they weren't planning to come in person. And so we decided to flex to cover telehealth, to do telehealth. We didn't know what we were going to do because we do primarily intensive outpatient, which to us means 3 or 4 days a week, 3 hours a day in groups. And we also do PHP, which to us means 5 hours a day, 5 days a week of groups. And those things were not covered by telehealth as far as we knew, and not at least in our state. And then within a few days, that started to flex. And so we, hustled, and we started to offer virtual IOP the week of March 16th. And then things continued to rapidly change. We found out that states were going to allow other providers who were not licensed in their state to provide services, which meant something to us because we're in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia, right close to each other. And that meant a lot to us. And then we found out that even some insurance companies might allow PHP to be paid for. So this was all just very striking and exciting. And I can't tell you how grateful we were to be able to have an option other than individual and family therapy to offer our clients who, many of them are struggling with borderline personality disorder and cutting behaviors and, suicidal thoughts, as many of the kids you guys work with and young adults. And so, everything just moved very quickly until today, which is April 1st. We've been doing this for 19 days, I guess, total. And 10 of those, virtual IOP. So what happens next? All of it, I think, is extremely exciting. I don't know if you can see this in my hand here. These are letters from my mother that are, I think they are 22 years old now. You can see the cursive, which I don't think my kids will ever know what cursive is. But I was living in Germany for a couple of years, and my mother got cancer, ovarian cancer. And it was very hard for me to be away from her because we were very close. I'm the oldest son I have 4 sisters, so you can imagine, either going to be close to your mom or not. And I was very close to my mother. And she would write me these letters, 1 a week for 2 straight years. And in these letters, she talks about having to walk to stay healthy and walking around the block. We had a half a mile block and not being able to make it. But in one particular letter, she talks about how she was able to refocus her mind on being grateful. And that simple act allowed her to walk an entire mile and along the way lift others up. And I think that's what we're talking about trying to do. So if I could just, well, I can't get this to work here. If I could just suggest ways that we could help our clients and our colleagues and our maybe company leaders feel some gratitude so they can eradicate their own fear, would be to do some of these things. We had to learn to assess differently. Our treatment teams were including things like, can that client be able, or can we manage that client from a distance? That was something that we hadn't really considered before. We'd always been in proximity. And so we had to think, well, who can I have in that group? Can I manage them from a distance? We had one kid who fell asleep right on camera. Thomas was making jokes before this started about, the mute button was still on. So he's snoring in the computer, and we had to have his mom's cell phone and call her to come in and wake him up all on screen, And so, can we manage them from a distance? Sometimes it's very pragmatic. Like, do we have his mom's cell phone? Parent contact has increased dramatically, as you can imagine, with people being at home all the time. Cutting has gone up. We've even had kids kind of up the ante and run away to kind of stick it to their parents. And can you imagine the anxiety and fear parents have is that maybe their kid will catch COVID-19 if they're running around. So we had to be more available to the parents. It's a little, we do DBT, so we're available to them all the time anyway. But this was even more. We had to track details of billing. For some of you, you're going to be like us. We get paid from insurance, and so we had to create a matrix. And so you can see I'm framing this as elements of gratitude for a reason. The parents are grateful because we're in contact with them. That eradicates their fear. Our company leaders are grateful because we're trying to be good stewards and create matrices which track insurance company reimbursement, and will they pay us the same rate, and do we double check their definition of telemental health, and what licensing laws were relaxed and do we know about it? That creates a feeling of gratitude which eradicates fear. We're retaining the rhythms in our company. It's really, really hard to do that in a crisis, but we've retained our weekly one-on-one calls with each other. We've increased the coordination meetings. We have our quarterly target setting, which happened right here at the end of March, which we kept anyway. We have, the treatment team meetings. We have the rounds with the psychiatrist. All of those were kept, which creates a feeling of stability and gratitude on the part of the staff. Things are much more disconnected because we're all virtual. We are used to seeing each other in person, and now we're not. And finally, I would say, and this is maybe a little bit darker, but we have to really consider flexing our business model. How do we take advantage of the exciting things that Daryl mentioned that are new and maybe increase revenue, but also how are we going to have to flex if it doesn't go the way we want it to go with our staffing? And being able to be clear about that and have a model with which we can argue or debate or discuss provides a lot of gratitude and security to people who are afraid for their jobs, or to our shareholders who are afraid for, how far south could this go? So all of these things, I think, provide this element of gratitude to combat the fear. This slide here is something I'm extremely grateful for. And I think Daryl and I were talking yesterday, and I wanted to make this point. The science of change will not change. This comes from research done on 6,000 studies of the results of mental health. This was a meta-analysis of 6,000 studies, and it was done in 1999 and again in 2016. And what they found was that there are 4 reasons that people change. People change primarily, the biggest chunk of it is 40% of change comes from things that we cannot control, acts of God. Well, guess what? The coronavirus is handing us a massive extra therapeutic factor right on a silver platter. The threat of illness, school closure, economic stressors all contribute to people being primed for change. We just need to shift them in the right direction. And that's where the other 60% comes into play. The research shows that the therapeutic relationship is 30% of the cause of change. And that can be enhanced by telemental health. Daryl cited a depression and anxiety study that showed that it was as good or better than in-person therapy. This has bent the minds of my therapists as some of them were kind of rejecting the idea. And now they're pretty excited about it as they see, as Daryl said, our attendance has increased. 15% of change as the best therapists know, is inspiring the client to feel hope that they can change. But what's worse than being trapped in your house and having already been very ill mentally, and now you're wondering, am I ever going to get better? And then here's this godsend of states shifting for your benefit and insurance companies shifting for your benefit and providers shifting for your benefit. And now you have hope that maybe I can stay connected to people online. And then the last 15% of change is technique. Most therapists think that that's the biggest part of change, that their style or modality is going to change people. But the reality is it's only 15%. It's still an important 15%. So we have to adapt our modality to virtual. For us, where we pride ourselves on doing a lot of experiential activities, that's meant a big shift. We have to play with sound and light and tone and speed. And again, assess the ability of the client to be managed from a distance to, pick up on people who aren't participating. One young woman last week was just, very, very quiet. And so you have to pick up on the body language. I'm so grateful for the ability for us to see people instead of just having to use the phone. So anyway, you get the idea. I'm feeling very thankful for all of this right now. And I would just finish, I think, with a final statement that comes from one of the letters that my mom sent me that says this. She was writing to me, this was back in 1992. She said, "But if I practice being grateful, I can go a little further than I thought and maybe lighten someone else's burden along the way." And I would offer that up as our opportunity here in this amazing time, that it's our opportunity to be a little more grateful, a little more positive, and maybe lighten somebody else's burden as we go a little further than we thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Appreciate that. And Megan, we can't see you, but we can hear you, hopefully. Are you there?
I'm there. We can go speaker.
All right.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a reason why you can't see me. Folks, I am in the middle of a move. So my entire house is covered in boxes and clothes and junk and all that fun stuff. So just bear me one moment while I set up the slide here. Okay, and hopefully everyone can see my screen. Mary Jo, pop in if you can. I do want to say thank you first to Daryl and Dustin. It's hard to follow those both. Dustin's making some major changes in his programs, and Daryl's kind of showing us how they've been doing it along and the changes they've made, even though they kind of had this dialed in. But just so everyone knows, I'm Megan Stokes. I'm the Executive Director of NATSAP. I want to give you a bird's eye view of what is happening with programs in regards to telemental health. I did this kind of quick and dirty poll, about a third of our members, just to ask what they're doing, what platforms they're using, if they are doing telemental health, any pitfalls we should be aware of, any unintended benefits to be on the lookout for now. So people are using platforms like Zoom, secured Google Hangouts, Doxy. There's some concern about using non-secure platforms, as that would violate HIPAA laws. But we have heard that those complaints will be waived during the crisis. Still, it is always best practice to use a secured HIPAA-compliant platform. So the programs using telehealth services are primarily right now for students who are off campus. They might have been home during spring break when this hit, or parents might have pulled them from the program but still want them to receive some services. But I am noticing that there are several programs who've started to use telemental health as an option for their on-campus students, especially in the last 2 weeks. We have some unexpected benefits. Programs have mentioned they really like how easy it is to conference in family members who are in separate parts of the country. You might have had divorced parents, or maybe trying to bring in an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, it's been a little easier for everyone to do. The other unexpected benefit is the flexibility in meeting the off-campus student needs. It's something where this flexibility can open up some really great options. Even after this coronavirus issue is passed, we can look at doing increased support for aftercare, or maybe if we're looking at maybe doing sort of a flexible IOP option for those who are not necessarily needing residential services but would still benefit from what's being offered at your program. So different benefits that people weren't expecting, and possibly in some cases might allow for a different revenue source. Things to be aware of. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we talk about is there's going to be maybe some additional cost for staffing, because if a therapist is working from home but are working with a student on campus, you're going to need additional residential staff to sit with that student while they're in session. It could be an additional cost, but also eventually possibly be an issue if you're looking at a staff shortage. I was also made aware that MFTs in Texas need to have 15 CEU hours in order to do telemental health. Your program, your state might have its own requirements. You have to make sure you check into that, but also look at the requirements for the state that you'll be contacting with. So if you are in Utah and you're going to be talking to a student who's back home in California, make sure you're aware of both of what those states' requirements are. As Daryl mentioned earlier, it's not a bad idea to invest in finding a HIPAA lawyer or a telehealth lawyer to kind of help walk you through this, to make sure that you're not going to get dinged for something that's buried in statute. Okay, this is my shameless self-promotion. We are moving a lot of things to virtual these days. So although I'm not a clinician, my staff are not clinicians, we don't work for a program, we're also looking at doing virtual tours that we're helping to set up with both IECA and TCA, so that programs can have consultants learn about their program without having to put their population at risk or those consultants at risk. We are also having, just blanking on it right now, we're looking at doing our regional conferences as virtual. We'll be making an announcement shortly about which ones will be going virtual, but it's something we're looking at. And we'll be doing our advocacy day virtually. Usually we would have people fly into Washington, D.C. We would meet with our congressional representatives and basically advocate for our programs, our students, the parents we serve. That's not safe right now, but we still need to make sure we have a presence. And there's a lot of things we can fight for. Some of the things we can fight for is telehealth laws that make sense across the entire nation. So that's something we can look at. If you're interested in joining our virtual advocacy day, it is May 20th. Conference calls will be occurring with your elected officials. You really don't have to do much. You have to show up and with your group speak for 15 minutes. We'll give you all the information you need ahead of time. If you're interested, please email Maddie@natsap.org to get signed up. And I'm going to stop screen sharing if I can. Did I not screen share the entire time?
You didn't, but I think I pulled it out, Megan.
Oh, God. I don't know what I did. Cannot see the screen in outline. Sorry, guys. I can't see the chat when I have it up. Oh, that's fun. You know what's fun? Technology. Yeah. Sorry. So Liz, did you have that available?
It was up there, and we can also send it out.
Yeah.
We'll also send it out so everyone can see it.
Good thing I'm not doing telehealth services.
Okay. So we wanted to, Megan, did you have more?
Oh, that was it. I just want to be quick and easy so we can go through Q&As.
Excellent. All right. So Daryl, Dustin, and Megan, thank you so much. We have some time here for questions. There was one question that came through that I'll read. It is, with the loosening of telehealth rules, are they still really tight with only allowing clinicians to do therapy within the state you reside in or are licensed in? And Daryl, I think you spoke about this yesterday. Do you want to share your information?
Yeah, I can. There's I can get you there's an app actually that can clue you into what the different state laws are right now for telehealth in general. But there is a loosening of interstate, practice right now. In fact, my New Jersey license just came yesterday. You can get a license in New Jersey in 48 hours. In terms of doing the work inside of your own state, is that what the question was? I'm having a hard time understanding the question, I think.
Yeah, I think my understanding of the question is telehealth only applicable within the state in which you reside or are licensed?
Under normal circumstances, yes, you're not supposed to practice outside your state unless you're licensed in the state that your client is in, which is why we weren't doing family therapy across state lines until now. And there are some states where you can't do that. Megan brought up Texas, where there's this requirement, although because if you're practicing in another state, they will allow you to do it temporarily. I think they have 180 days that they'll give you, just like New Jersey. But you have to really do a deep dive into the particular state you're looking at working with.
Daryl, do you have, or can you type into the chat box the name of that app?
I will try to find that. Yeah.
Perfect. Oh, look, somebody found it. Christina found it. Telemental health laws. That's all I can see. Oh, here
does it look like this, Daryl?
Yeah, it's Epstein, Becker, and Green. If you, that's
I'll type it in for you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. Other questions for our guests? Feel free to unmute or type something in.
Mary Jo, hi, it's Jody.
Hi, Jody.
As a question for the group, but also especially for Megan. Some consultants just sort of on their own have started working with a Google spreadsheet to keep abreast of the latest news from programs. It's been very useful, but I don't know who's responsible for keeping it. My question for Megan and for the group is, shouldn't this be a NatSap project to have an ongoing spreadsheet of the latest news from programs, who's accepting, who can't, where kids can cross the state lines, where they can't cross the state lines, where kids can come by airplanes, where they can't come by airplane, all of that latest stuff that we as consultants need to know. I'm wondering if NatSap can sort of take over that project. Megan, are you there?
Wait, she's muted.
Unmute. There we go. Okay. Yep. So I'm going to share the spreadsheet for those who do not have it already. It is a project that Jamie Goodman from Pilcrow Advisors and a couple of her colleagues have all kind of added to. So I've actually looked into this. It would be a lot of work on behalf of my staff. We are pretty stretched thin right now in trying to offer different services to our members. But because things are so fluid and they are changing so much on a day-to-day basis, I can't call all of our members week to week, let alone daily, to see what's going on, what's changing. And also, they're stretched thin. They're worried about their staff. Their staff has fears. So for me to add one more thing to their plate, I'd rather not. But, a consultant calling, that's a potential referral. They're going to make sure that you have all the information you possibly need. Me calling, I'm not a referral, so they might not have the time to really work with me on that. And I also think that Jamie and the rest of the people who are basically helping out with that Google Doc have done a really great job so far. We are having that Google Doc available. I asked Jamie for her permission. It is on our coronavirus resource page under the NatSap member portal. You must be signed in to see it. We've got a really robust page. But yeah, we're pretty stretched thin in terms of trying to make sure we're doing what we can for the programs. And I don't know if I can add that to our plate right now. But yeah, good question.
Thank you, Megan. So if I understood your answer, it's too much for you to take on to manage it, but you do have what is sort of being managed privately. You have that on the NatSap homepage?
Yeah, so on the member portal. So you will have to be signed in. We have our webinars that we did for both programs and for educational consultants available on that portal. There's information about applying to the Small Business Administration Loans and Grants program. We have 5 or 6 different links to different resources that our programs have been sharing with each other. We're going to be adding in the Embark information as well, because they've got a really robust Google Drive full of resources right now. So basically, the word of the day is collaboration. For us, I know that grateful is definitely another word we should be adding to the list, but yeah, collaboration is how we're kind of handling it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a comment on that. This is Dana Doring. With the several children that have moved between programs this week, I'm finding that the programs can't have just one standard answer to the question Jody asked, but that they are doing a very in-depth, detailed profile on every single kid and that family and what their travel history has been, and even what county they're coming from. I've even had 2 kids handled very differently from one state because each kid was in a different county. So I think it's too complex and too specific and customized an answer for each kid to have a generic answer, even from one program, or at least that's been my experience this week.
Thanks for that, Dana. Yeah, and I see there's a statement here, right? It's accurate for students. The assessment is a moving target. And I know that, again, that there have been, the information is just changing on a daily basis. So I know everybody's trying to keep up. There was another question that, let me just scroll back up again. That was about telemental health. Is it contraindicated for children with reactive attachment disorder? Can somebody comment on intersubjectivity? Can it really happen in telemental health? And I saw that Daryl responded that major mental illness tend to be a challenge in this format. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I can only speak to that anecdotally once, in that I worked with a client who was managing and living with reactive attachment disorder, was at a boarding school, and the format was really hard for him if there wasn't some kind of carrot dangled in front of every session and continuing on. So I leave that to people who are, that's their lane. Maybe there is a way, and I don't know what the research says about work with telemental health and RAD.
I would just say that that I think we should be cautious at making broad strokes about specific diagnoses and take it case by case. And in my experience, everyone wants to connect. It's just figuring out how they want to connect and how they best are served by that type of connection. And so someone that has symptoms of RAD as a child, and maybe it merges into borderline personality or narcissism in older life or whatever, all those things are different for each person. So I think I liked what Daryl said about having a clinical director serve as an ethical kind of backstop and having a team of people making a decision. I think that's probably the best way to go. We're experimenting. Obviously, I don't have as much experience as Daryl, but we have people who have pretty serious mental health issues, and they're really thriving because they love this forum of communication. They already are on it all the time. So I think you just have to take it case by case.
Thanks, Dustin. I want to be mindful of time. Do folks have any other questions? Any pressing questions? And again, I will make sure when we send out this information that Daryl's, Dustin's, and Megan's contact information are also included, so that you can reach out to them with more specifics. Anyone else? Okay, so I wanted to thank everyone again for participating. In particular, thank you to Daryl and Dustin and Megan for being willing to take the time and to share with everybody, share your experience, your information. We're hoping that it's really helpful to everyone. Again, we will put out a follow-up so that everybody has access to the PowerPoint slides as well as additional resources, and welcome sharing of additional resources to add to that. I also would like to let folks know that as part of our follow-up from last week, we did put out a survey to ask folks what topics of interest they wanted to see discussion on. So another sort of big winner of that survey was the topic of transition for young adults in particular. So in recognition of a big shift in what resources are available for young adults who are transitioning home from treatment, we are our focus next week, the plan is for our focus next week to look at those issues of young adult transition. Of course, we know this is a really fluid environment right now, so if something else comes up in the meantime that feels more pressing to address, we will take our cues from that as well. So thank you everyone for participating. We hope we see you next week. Again, don't hesitate to reach out in the meantime, and hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.
Thanks, everyone.